Hello Summoners, what is going on? My name is Saskew, and today we're going to be taking a look at the success of the massive League item rework that happened at the beginning of the season. There have been a lot of thoughts going around on whether or not the item rework was a healthy change for League. Let's take a look at exactly why items are so powerful and necessary within the game's competitive dynamic. Before we even begin talking about the item rework, I think it's important that we look at the foundation of it. What exactly are items meant to do, and what makes them so valuable? At face value, items are just things that boost your stats, and more often than not, make you stronger. However, items actually have a massive impact on the game, and being able to balance them out can be pretty difficult. If we actually look at items, they're all about maximizing the amount of value you get for the stats. This is where the concept of gold efficiency comes in. If an item is extremely expensive and doesn't offer any good benefits, it becomes obsolete and never gets built. This dynamic functions in a similar supply and demand style that buffs and nerfs do. The difference is that this is far more difficult to adjust without completely breaking the game at times. I mean, a great example is the beginning of this season. Mirror Mana had extreme value for its price point, but not for ADCs. Instead, it was valuable for mages who wanted a ton of extra damage. It's small oversights like this that can lead to powerful combinations that Riot has never even considered. This makes it hard to offer versatile itemization options because obviously, people are only ever going to build the strongest items. But before we move on to why there was an item rework, don't forget to check us out at ProGuides.com, where you can view our great catalog of coaches that can personally create a walkthrough to your dream rank. While you're there, be sure to explore around and take a look at our amazing subscription services so you can watch exclusive videos by CoreJJ, Xsmithy, and more. Nonetheless, let's get back into the video and dive right into what the goals of the item rework really were. Now that we've broken down the value and purpose of items, let's take a look at what Riot sets out to accomplish with this massive item overhaul. Starting us off, let's take a look at healing and how its empowerments and reductions have been handled. As a whole, healing was looking a bit problematic, and so Riot wanted to look at widening the options that were available to deal with him. To handle this, they looked at making it available for nearly any champion to itemize Grievous effectively for their team. This meant introducing the enhanced 60% Grievous wounds to things like Thornmail, and adding items like Chemtech Putrefier to ensure that champions of all types could have access to it. With this adjustment, it was no longer the job of the Marksman class to itemize the 800 gold Executioner's Calling and stall at their power spike. Alongside the new Grievous Wounds adjustments, Riot as a whole decided to lower innate healing found in runes and kits. Next up, we've got the idea of reworking jungle items to be a bit easier to build while also still allowing for build versatility. Before, you would have to continue building your jungle item in order to reap the benefits of its stats. However, with the new item rework, junglers would now receive the free benefits later on so that they could better itemize as the game goes on. Now, instead of having to save up gold for your second item after your jungle item, you can instead buy your jungle item early and have it upgrade for free after 5 smites. While this may not seem that important, it actually allows junglers to change their build paths as they see fit, especially with the added item diversification that we'll get to later on. Let's take a look at how Riot wants to change up the marksman and mage items. These two classes often struggled with having any real strategic choices when it came to itemization. Marksmen were often stuck in the loop of building Infinity Edge or Blade of the Rune King, and mages often had to submit to buying Zhonya's and Rabadons in order to be useful. When it comes to the marksman class, Riot was looking to allow diversification with their items. For the past few seasons, ADCs have been tied to specific item orders and lacked any real strategic options. With the new item rework, they were looking to offer powerful first items that could be swapped out depending on the game state. With the introduction of mythic items, marksmen got to choose between the mobility with Gale Force, survivability with Shield Bow, or DPS with Kraken Slayer. While not many carries can easily flex these items, a majority of them now have a myriad of viable choices when it comes to outplaying the enemy with your itemization choices. As for mages, Riot was looking to allow for a powerful first item choice that wasn't cookie cutter every game. While this was only slightly remedied by the item rework, it still has some success when it comes to strategizing what items should be built. Will you opt for Liandry's for Tank Shred, Luden's for Wave Clear and DPS, Night Harvester for Burst? The options are up to you, and while they may not be great, they're still a step up from last season when it comes to diversity. Unless you're someone like Katarina who now has to rush Nashers instead of Gunblade, plus, mages now have the option of additional ability haste rather than it being a random useful stat. Are you looking to spam abilities or simply hit hard? With the new items, the choice is now up to you. Looking at a few other classes, we won't go too in depth, but let's continue to cover the important things. When it comes to tanks, last season it felt like they had a clear-cut path with barely any magic resistance or utility options. Now they're able to choose hyper tank stats, a mix of damage, engage, or the occasional slight combination of all three. While they still lack a few item options, they're now able to itemize depending on the situation and whether they want to play for the team dynamic or instead opt for a more solo playstyle. As for fighters, they were often stuck with the simple two-choice defensive options. Do you want Sterix or do you want Death Stance? And for some champions, the answer was that you wanted both. With the item rework, fighters were looking to receive far more defensive options as well as more diverse core item choices, which is still a bit rough around the edges. That being said, fighters have been fluctuating in the meta with their power levels due to the changes with items like Stridebreaker, which makes it hard to see how bad the rework was for this class. When it comes to assassins, specifically AD assassins, Riot was fairly satisfied with their itemization. The biggest issue came with their inability to scale into the late game. However, with the introduction of a new critless armor pen item, they now had a fighting chance when the game dragged out longer than expected versus multiple bruisers. Last but not least, we've got enchanter itemization choices. When it comes to enchanters, they never really had many item options, and more often than not, they chose between healing or a tank item, with both options not being too good at either. The item rework aimed to provide enchanters with both optimal defense options and better itemization choices when it came to empowering their carries through either additional healing or damage boosts. Before we continue on with the video, don't think for a second that we have forgotten about everyone's favorite ProGuides tradition. For our question of the day, we want to know, what was your favorite part of the item rework? Personally, I really enjoyed the new mythic item system as it felt like there were actual tiers for the items, almost like an MMO RPG. Let us know your answers in the comments section down below. Nonetheless, let's get back into the video and break down just how successful the rework was. When it comes to debating whether or not the item rework has been successful, well, it can be a bit of a touchy subject. While some really enjoy the new itemization choices, others feel like they got cheated out of the ideal power spikes that they were able to achieve last season. The community itself has fought around the concept of reverting the changes or adding new items as a whole, and from what we can tell, Riot is open to the idea of new items. Hence the introduction of both Hullbreaker and Anathema's Chain. When it comes to the classes, a few have had significantly more success than others. Let's take a look at a few examples. Like how marksmen now have a great strategic choice when it comes to changing their playstyle based on the game state. However, now they lack proper defensive options, and some may even think there's an overall nerf to crit carries as the items had their critical strike chance reduced. And don't even get ADC main started on the fact that Armor Pen and Grievous Wounds are now two separate items. Mid laners, on the other hand, don't feel like the rework offered them much versatility as it tends to be Luden's or Leandre's meta than rushing Azanya's. The biggest change for them was really just playing around the mythic power spike and attempting to find powerful new playstyles with what they have available to them. Even then, it can be a bit rough for many mages alike as their power can at times feel very underwhelming. Then we've got assassins. While AD assassins were offered a pretty powerful boost with not only extremely powerful mythic options, but also a late game penetration option, AP assassins were left feeling a bit weak with the removal of items like Hextech Gunblade. Their high burst was often countered by the newfound survivability offered by the new item rework, and even if they had damage, it often took too long to reach a good enough point to have consistent high bursts. If we visit tanks and bruisers, they're also in a fairly odd state when it comes to the meta of items. Tanks at first had to choose whether or not they wanted hard engage or tanky stats, and eventually they simply chose that one mythic was better than all the others. When it comes to bruisers, they were often met with the other choice of abusing strong fighter mythics or simply opting for marksman based items. Whether you choose Divine Sunder or Gourd Drinker really depended on which one was more nerfed at the time. And on the rare occasion, there was also the chance you could pick up Stridebreaker before it was completely nerfed. As for enchanters as a whole, they didn't feel like they had many impactful options. They have decent options to empower their carry, but they still lack any real defensive choices that either help their carry's survivability or increase their own. This often leads to champions like Soraka and Lulu building tank items in order to survive bursts and keep their marksmen alive. Whether or not the item rework was successful or merely created a big mess is up in the air. However, the important part is that it added a massive new experience to League, especially in a way that really hasn't been seen before. Not only were there new items, but there are now tiers of items that have added benefits as the game time goes on. By the way, if you want to join an amazing community of people like you that love lists, talk pieces, and other things like this, check out our Discord using the link found in the description. So what are you waiting for? Join. Nonetheless, let's get back into the video and take a close look at our few final closing thoughts. As we near the end of the video, it's important to keep in mind that big changes like this can be fairly difficult to manage. That being said, we still hope Riot works towards changing the game so that both new players and veterans alike can enjoy a breath of fresh air and still have fun as they queue up for their next game. Plus, there's still a chance that Riot will add additional items and maybe even rework a few. As for what improvements could be made when it comes to the new item system, a lot of these issues could be fixed with a far more in-depth adjustment to each individual item. Now, the issue with this is that classes may end up using mythic items that are not created for them, which can lead to issues like Divine Sunder Senna and Mirror Mana Rise. Regardless, while items should have main goals for certain classes, we believe having the flexibility to choose items outside of your class should be viable, even if it's not every game. Nonetheless, that sums up our video for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to join our ProGuides family at ProGuides.com. We offer exclusive giveaways and classes that you won't catch anywhere else, so stay tuned and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next video. Don't forget to stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day.